Morning cellists. Here we are on our second lesson looking at Rachmaninoff's slow movement from his sonata for cello, and we're also covering a study this week. Now just a little addendum from yesterday's lesson. There were a couple of things which I was not absolutely certain about, and I was mentioning and referring to the comparative use of the piano by Brahms that we saw last week in his E minor sonata and Rachmaninoff. And I did make some reference to the development of instruments, and that's where my mind was just thinking, how true is that in this situation? Because, I mean, during the 19th century, with all the industrial changes and creation of iron frames in pianos, that meant that the casement could be so much stronger, they could tolerate really heavy and taut strings, so even the construction of strings changed. But most of that change occurred in the first half of the 19th century. So by 1860 or so, when Brahms was writing the E minor sonata, those major changes to the instrument had already been well established. But what instrument Brahms was working on, I don't know. Probably, I'm assuming, one of the Viennese style pianos, but I would imagine it was something that was absolutely capable of taking a great deal of force. And similarly, we look at Rachmaninoff. What kind of piano was he using? I mean, certainly, obviously, by the time he's emigrated to America, and he does absolutely favour Steinways. It's an interesting point, and perhaps some of you who are also pianists or have an interest in this might find out, and please do post on my channel if you do find out. I mean, what is clear in terms of the two types of composition from the cellist's point of view in those sonatas is you have to work a jolly darn sight harder in the cello line of the Rachmaninoff for the balance point of view. So there's something in the writing there, because I mean Brahms can be incredibly rich and dramatic, and obviously also cover the whole tessitura of the instrument. Perhaps it's just a slightly different approach from a slightly different era, you know, coming out of the end of the classical era and in all these new formations. Anyways, food for thought. A bit more power required for the cellist in Rachmaninoff. Now, looking at our warm-ups today, the first one actually relates to something else, which was a little question mark in my mind, because I was glancing over to sort of comment on a harmony in yesterday's fragment of the Andante, and I think it was bar 29, where we'd arrived, and I said, I think that's an E flat 7 chord. It's not, it's actually one of my favourites. It's an augmented harmony, so we've got C flats in there, and it does change, you know, during the bar. The harmony does change there, and we do end up with the 7th chords coming through in this phrase. But therefore I thought, since I've now corrected myself and said, oh no, it's actually an augmented chord, let's have one of those lovely augmented triads for an arpeggio warm-up. So we're going to begin on the E flat, and if we take the fingering of the 1-4, stretching each time, it's easier for you to feel the physical pattern and shape. Similarly to the diminished sevenths, which we're in minor thirds, and we have this little crab crawl effect, that the augmented triad, we crab crawl the other direction towards the floor, and we stretch out before we cross. Let's try it and see. So here we are. That's not quite right. Better. Have a go at one of those, and I've got another arpeggio for us to consider, perhaps a little bit easier but not completely familiar. So it is a major arpeggio with an added 7th, but not the usual minor 7th, which creates a dominant, and that's what I had thought I was looking at bar 29, which we aren't. So instead of with D flats in this E flat major arpeggio, we're going to put in D naturals, and I would suggest that maybe we start in the same location as for the augmented triad, so you get some similarity of shape. it is used in the sonata in the next section that we're going to be looking at. Let me see if I can identify for you a location. So yeah, touches on it bar 32. Okay, so it does have an application. Thinking of applications, the section that we will be beginning today, which is at bar 31, think of what the key is. And in actual fact, at this point, we're going to be diverting momentarily to D flat minor harmony. And therefore, I would like you to put your thinking caps on about a minor scale, but think of D flat minor melodic. Now normally when we look at D flat major, as soon as we think of the minors, we think of C sharp minor, not D flat minor. And of course it's from where it's positioned on the circle of fifths, because otherwise we're getting into rather a lot of flats. And yes, we are. We're going to be looking at 8 flats for D flat minor. How do you do that, since there are only 7 letter names? Well, you're going to have a B double flat. So let's just try it out and see. So here, B double flat, A flat, G flat, F flat, E flat, D flat. Don't cheat and play it as if it's C sharp minor. Honestly, think about it as D flat minor. And I said I was taking the melodic version there because it kind of fits with the fragment of D flat minor that we're looking at in Rachmaninoff today. There's food for thought. Now, 2 of those things, the triad and the major with the major 7th, I have got a screenshot for you. So the top one is showing you the augmented triad, and I've written it out using a C flat because I am actually considering what Rachmaninoff is doing in bar 29 of this movement. You could imagine it as a B natural if you prefer, it's up to you. And then the E flat major with just the D natural, which I have specifically allocated a natural sign to it, just to make sure that we've got that right, and we're not going to try and make it into a dominant 7th. Okay, proceeding. We are going to look at Feuillard's study number 47, and we're going to do the next 4 bars of this. And again, this is all about talking about the use of enharmonic moves and sort of hearing things and seeing things in different lights. We've touched upon that a moment ago in the idea of, instead of C sharp minor, we're looking at D flat minor. And in the sonata, there's a great deal of scope in terms of using an enharmonic equivalent note in order to pivot and change and make harmonic sense. So we've arrived at bar 5 of the study, and we're in F sharp minor, which is all making absolute sense because there's a little tiny bit of C sharp major, which is the dominant of F sharp minor. I'm trying to encourage you to not just look linearly, but imagine what the harmony really is underneath in the implications here. This is a nice little moment, crossing the string. It's just a little embellishment of the C sharp, which is the dominant, to F sharp minor, which is the key we're sitting in at the moment. And there's an element of melodic minor coming down there. Okay. Now, as soon as we've moved up to this harmonic A and gone across, at the minute we're looking at stopping one finger but using a light harmonic 3rd finger, we've immediately pivoted one tiny semitone change from C sharp to D natural, and we've now got a D major implication. Continuing that vein, G major implication. Now this next note that I've played, oh, well, it sounds to your ear like something familiar. Sounds like a G7 chord, you know, with an F natural. However, as you'll know if you've got your manuscript in front of you there, it's not an F natural, it's an E sharp. And when you first read that, you might feel a little uncomfortable about where to find the note. But as soon as If you imagine that oral link with an F natural, I think you'll find it easier. In terms of geography, we've got a first finger on B natural, we're going back a displaced semitone as if you were going to an F natural. It's written as an E sharp, okay, just so we understand that's why it sort of looks a little bit awkward to anticipate and imagine. Oh, so instead of going on with the G7 idea that your brain might be thinking, oh yes, I can latch onto it. No, straight away you're stretching the next note up a semitone, so we're going straight back to C sharp major implication. And turns it into C sharp added 7th, which is dominant 7th, arriving in F sharp major. So there's quite a lot of movement. We've gone from F sharp minor, we've touched on a G major, so there's a chromatic shift for a moment, and very, well, I was going to say neatly, it's not all that neat to be honest, it's a little bit on the gauche side, this immediate pivot, but it's a very useful piece of work to be looking at because these sorts of pivots occur in music a great deal of the time, particularly, you know, from 1800 onwards, I would say, more so. So our whole fragment is there it is. So again about flow and feeling as if it's a really easy thing, even though initially to read it may not be. Okay. Now on to the business of Rachmaninoff. So we left the story yesterday with this sort of quite intense E-flat arrival, which I'd say don't relax on your laurels at this point because there is a drama unfolding right underneath your feet. And it is literally absolutely under your feet because the leading bar into bar 31 that we're looking at, the dovetailing from yesterday, so all this B flat 7th harmonies, you know, it's dominant 7th harmonies, and we're expecting this to be a lovely E flat major arrival. But there's an incredible drama in the piano part where the bottom note is a D flat, and therefore actually it's looking at, it's turning it into already a 7th chord. But the D flat at the bottom is incredibly unnerving, and this is actually known as a third inversion, where it would normally sit at the top. We would have E flat, G, B flat and D flat, and as we know that's root. If the G's at the bottom it's first inversion, B flat at the bottom second inversion, D flat at the bottom third inversion, and it's absolutely unexpected. You know, going down to a D flat. What on earth is it doing? And there's immediately this question mark, which I said we were absolutely falling straight into directly on that first beat. There's also another change in the score. We've mentioned previously the occasional second half of the bar having semiquavers in the left hand of the piano and giving that sense of something a bit urgent, something forthcoming. And here it is, because this section that we're looking at today, from bar 31 through to beginning of 41, is all looking at semiquaver patterns in the piano part and duplets. But as you'll know, looking at your cello part, you have triplets. So you're really at odds with the piano, and that's how you can create such an incredible, almost orchestral texture with so much going on rhythmically, not fitting absolutely in a puzzle, but beautifully interweaving. So this kind of adds to the unsettled feeling which we get through the harmonies. You know, you're going to get some D flat minor, which we have mentioned, this beginning of the cello line. E flat 7s again, E flat with major 7ths, which we've covered, G flat 7s, a lot of 7ths coming on here, B flat minor, we touched through. There's a sort of implied E flat 7 with a 9/8 suspension. Yes, you get the idea. There's a great deal of unsettled chords. Whenever we are adding 7ths, 9ths, this sort of thing, basically they're looking for a resolution when we add more notes up that arpeggiatic chordal structure. We're basically getting into the finer harmonics, if you like, in the harmonic series on that chord, and there's a sense of it being unsettled. And we are really striving to try and find some peace here. And that's what really adds to the emotional content of the work. So it's not just a really lovely, beautiful line, a melodic line, which it is, but it's absolutely brilliantly constructed in terms of how it makes you feel like you're pushing through a journey and striving to find a resolution. Now, momentary, whilst I've just mentioned about the melodic, beautiful melodies, in actually the whole of this sonata, I mean, you could really sing them all out on your walks when you get your free time for a walk in COVID. And let's just bear in mind that Rachmaninoff published his second piano concerto in the same year, 1901, which is absolutely known for its beautiful melodic lines as well. And I think that the elegiac trios for piano trio also came out about this time. And there's a lot in all of those with really lovely melodic lines that interweave. So, having arrived at this intense E flat, it does say piano in the score, but we've mentioned it's really important you don't just relax on the piano, keep it an intense one. And then you're going to come in with a more firm voice. Now at this moment, your upbeat is a duplet, and so it fits really beautifully with the piano. We're playing semiquavers in the left hand and beautiful quaver melody from the beginning. So you'll fit perfectly in your upbeat easily. But notice that's the only duplet upbeat in your whole triplet passage. The rest of them, when they come, say at bar 33, it's a triplet. Always a triplet upbeat thereafter. So make the distinction. There's something about one coming from this sort of really calm reflection and sort of toying around with the triplet duplet idea in the previous section. We're just coming awake. Now the danger here that when you have triplets which are crotchet and a quaver in a triplet shape, like now you need to be sure that you maintain a really, really concrete sense of that triplet, because the piano has semiquavers and it'd be very easy to play, and it's not that. Don't play a semiquaver. Keep your sense of the triplet, and in a way, even though this interlocking of fours against threes feels like it's agitating forward, but actually I think you need to imagine sort of sitting back, still feeling the kind of calm repose that you heard in the previous section. So let's go duplet and triplet. Duplet here. You can hear there's a lot of repetition going on there, absolutely driving through and forward. Let me just have a glance and see, this is 35, 36. So at this point harmonically we've got sort of diminished triads with major sevenths added onto them, a D flat 7, not truly resolving though, where we have, let me just see where we've got to this. This is trying to get to E flat at this point, you know, in terms of an E flat 7 chord is implied, and it's not happening, you know. Instead we've got a kind of a ninth here, but without the E flat that we're looking for, and then in fact it takes an absolute turn, so that when we have this pulling up in the writ with this that's actually it's actually F7 arriving at B flat. So we're arriving momentarily at B flat major harmony, which is the dominant of our key centre for this movement. Now, what is, you may sort of feel like, oh, there's an awful lot of like chordal references, harmonic references, and the reason is it's all too easy just to play a melodic line. But as we're sort of looking at it in the Feuillard study, these lines are only beautiful, really the full dimension of their beauty is only understood when you know what the harmony is, or have some feeling for why, it's unresolved, it's not the one you're expecting it to be, and then you can add drama and colour to it, and it wouldn't be here. That's played without any mind at all to the changing colour underneath, and it's just sort of almost sort of waiting to get to the top B flat, please. But when you understand the colours changing underneath, you realise that each time you come to the crotchet F, it's amazing, because something incredible is underneath that note. Absolutely gorgeous, and you can therefore really maximise your impact if you really connect to these colours that are changing underneath your relatively repetitive note fragments there. Now, we're coming sort of soon enough to the close point of this section for today's class. And what is kind of going to be interesting on this journey, if you remember that, the key of the movement is E flat, it's not surprising that we've got to this sense of B flat, but it doesn't remain dominant for even more than a quaver, because adds in the seventh straight away and starts flirting with other keys. He's going C minor, G minor. Where did we find that? It's the key of the entire sonata, I'll give you a hint. A lot of impactful changes. As we come down here, we've got A flat major, F minor, diminished, and F7, and looking there, we've got some C flats. That's quite useful if you've been doing D flat minor melodic, isn't it? Yes. So again, we're talking about a lot of chordal changes, beautiful harmonies, actually giving that little sideways glance to the key of the whole sonata, which is exactly what happens when we get to these. All these B flats, which in the cello part you're thinking, oh yeah, that's quite clear, this is just a load of B flats which I'll make really dramatic and powerful. They're a dominant to arrive at E flat major. That's what you might expect it to be. And as ever, it's not what you expect. So in actual fact, in terms of the movement coming up to this point, leading up to this peak R tempo at bar 37, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of semiquavers perpetually in this section until that moment. Then we start to kind of feel the breadth of things as the piano plays huge crotchet chords at this bar 37 and bar 38. And at 39, where we're thinking this looks to me like a dominant situation, there's an incredible crotchet thrust. So Rachmaninoff makes the indication that we should play straight away on the C string here, so we're getting this strength and power on this heaviest string, and that first triplet is absolutely on your own. No chord underneath, despite the fact we've had all this rich harmonies all the way through. Then suddenly we have a window of light, and the harmonisation of the piano comes in on the second crotchet. It's G minor, not B flat major, and very, very powerful. There's been a little hint of it a couple of bars before, and here it is. The key of the sonata, sitting like a little key in the centre of this glorious gem of a movement. So just looking, we then, at this point, temporally speaking, we are still our tempo, but sort of written in the writing here of the rhythm as if we've got a pulling up. You know, towards the end of these two bars you go into duplets, you have a lot of accents, and of course it feels like we're really pulling out, because not only that, but we've had, as I mentioned, semiquavers through to 36 in the piano, 2 bars of crotchets, then a crotchet rest where we are playing this triplet B flat, then the piano comes in with minims over the beat structures, so plays strongly on the 2nd and 4th beats, these huge big G minor chords. That's 2 bars worth of that, so there's this real sense of pulling up in the construct of the writing. There's a very powerful low B flat in the left hand in bar 40, just before the final resolution. Yippee, here we are at E flat major in bar 41. And to be fair, 40 does move to the expected B flat 7 chord, but just only at the end of the bar. So what I'm kind of trying to get your attention about is that even if you're not a pianist, even if you haven't studied musicology or much music theory, but you're a passionate cellist, performer, musician, you love to listen, use those ears, understand the drama that is being presented by the rhythmic structures and the use of harmony. Even if you can't particularly label it yourself, I think you can hear it, and we can be guided by your response to these harmonies. So that from the very top at 37 we have just sort of hear the duplicate at the end there. You notice in terms of technique to rise your forearm really well above, so that you're getting a good amount of support to the fingers on the C string there. Don't leave it where you think you've arced over and rotated, but not enough. You know, we need to get the natural arm rate to help you maximise the sound, especially as with just one note on a C string, and the piano is huge and very, very powerful. During that descent, that sort of B flat 7 apparent implied descent, although I mentioned there are other things going on underneath, the keeping the sense of breadth of that triplet would be helped by having a nice flat bow hair, especially for the string crossings. Flat bow hair helps with the control of the evenness, so that you don't accidentally rush, and also with tone quality as well, and ease of crossing and speaking, making the string speak. So absolutely incredible moment, and it is very climactic. You know, you've got this, if you're looking at the tempo marks where we began today with our tempo in this mysterious D flat minor has come out of nowhere. The impetuous build up as we mentioned, colourful harmonies leading to that, a ritardando into the top apparent dominant descent at 37, and final arrival here, and the rest is going to be a completely different story which we will pick up tomorrow. I mean, oddly enough, even though this is incredible and a great amount of powerful energy arriving at quite a high point, we have not reached the emotional high point of temperature just yet. See you tomorrow.